Joining us now to discuss the impact of the Venezuelan operation on the Chinese Communist Party strategy is Chris Chappell, host of China Uncensored, a popular channel on YouTube. And we have Grant Newsham, retired U.S. Marine Colonel, former U.S. diplomat, and senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. First of all, thank you both for joining us. Chris, I'll start with you. And before we talk about Venezuela, I just want to address the mass protests in Iran, marking the biggest challenge to the Iranian regime in years. What are the main connections, I want to ask you, between the Iranian regime and the Chinese regime?
Well, I think the Chinese Communist Party, being a brutal authoritarian dictatorship, is very concerned anytime it sees another authoritarian regime struggling or verging on collapse. But it goes beyond that. China has used Iran as a regional proxy to destabilize and occupy the U.S. attention for years. And, you know, China, if it wants to take Taiwan, needs to secure energy assets. And Iran, particularly sanctioned Iranian oil, was a very affordable option for the Chinese Communist Party. And that might disappear very soon.
Okay, so Colonel Newsham, can I go to you now? How would it impact China if, let's say, the Iranian regime falls? And what is the likelihood of that?
Well, the Chinese would lose a lot of oil. I think they can live without Venezuelan oil, but the Iranians provide a huge chunk of China's energy supplies. What would happen if the regime fell in Iran is, as Chris said, China would lose that proxy that they've had in the Middle East that they've used very effectively. But it gives the Chinese huge political influence in the region also. But what really scares the Chinese here would be if you had two dictatorships that China has implicitly been guaranteeing their survival, simply go under in a matter of days. And that would scare the daylights out of them. And the Communist Party, the top dogs, they are very frightened of this, to see that what happens in Iran, Venezuela, and to think that, well, maybe the Chinese people themselves would get some ideas from this, see that they don't have to live under a dictatorship. So they're looking at this, and this has really got them worried. The Venezuelan was scary enough, but Iran is even more so. This is a big deal. The likelihood of the Iranian regime going under, that's hard to say. These windows open, and they don't stay open all that long. It's a very repressive regime. It's willing to shoot a lot of people. It already has. It's willing to shoot more. And I'm not sure that mass protests are going to do the job. The people who want freedom may need some more support than that.
Okay, Chris, I'm wondering if you have anything to build on that. What do you think China is most worried about right now?
I think, building off what Grant said, what the Chinese Communist Party is most worried about is a United States willing to step up and exert its military and economic might for freedom. If the U.S. does help topple the Iranian regime, that's got to scare the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, so Colonel, I want to ask you a question about Venezuela. To what extent does removing access to Venezuelan oil impact China?
It's not a huge thing, because they only provide about 4% of Chinese oil or so, and they can probably find that somewhere else. But they were using Venezuela as a platform. It's part of their effort to create something called a petro yuan or petro RMB to replace or be an alternative to the US dollar, which is the one big thing that causes them trouble, is their reliance on US dollars and having to get it. So in terms of pure energy, it's not a huge thing, but in terms of the political, psychological effect of really your lapdog, your guy in Latin America, simply being removed by the Americans, and the Chinese hardware, the Russian hardware couldn't protect him. And your proxies, the Cubans, who had a few hundred people protecting this guy, couldn't protect it. That's an embarrassment for the Chinese. And the Chinese public notices this as well. They think, well, the Americans are pretty good. They're not so sure the People's Liberation Army is. So there's a lot of problems that come out of Venezuela for the Chinese communists. The oil itself is probably not the main one, however.
Okay, so Chris, what is an impact on China right now, given the situation with Venezuela, that President Trump is saying that they'll temporarily run the country and then, securing its oil sector?
Well, China's near-term goal is to conquer Taiwan, and it needs to terrify the U.S. into not coming to Taiwan's defense. Now, seeing a United States that is capable of what it did in Venezuela, where the military came in with almost supernatural force, that signals to the Chinese Communist Party that if they attempt something on Taiwan, who knows what the U.S. might do to them.
Okay, Grant, your response to what Chris is saying.
Well, when the Chinese look at an assault on Taiwan, they want to do it fast. And we're talking about a week or so, not an extended campaign where they slug it out, but something that happens very quickly. If they get bogged down, this is going to cause some real problems with their population, regardless of any initial surge of patriotism. And there's no great love for the Chinese Communist Party, and the vast majority of the citizenry, 600 million of whom live on $5 a day. So China needs to do it fast. And if it looks like the Americans have suddenly found a backbone, have got some will, and just might weigh in on Taiwan's behalf, then it is not going to be a quick takeover of Taiwan, and China just might get stuck. And what they saw in Venezuela, and they might see more of it in Iran. That does cause them some concern, throws off their timetable, but particularly this demonstration of American will by this administration. And the Chinese are always calculating the will of their intended victims and recalculating it. And this has surprised them, because I think they've gotten pretty used to American administrations rolling over, with the exception of Trump 1 and Trump 2.
So, Chris, how has the Chinese regime's Western Hemisphere strategy changed since what happened?
Well, I think with, as it's being called, the Donroe Doctrine, with the U.S. seeking to secure its interests in the Western Hemisphere and kick out Chinese influence, this is going to be a major blow to the Chinese Communist Party. I think we need to keep an eye on what happens in Cuba next. Trump has already been joking that Marco Rubio might be the next president of Cuba, but there's only so many jobs that man can have.
So Grant, what are your thoughts here? A previous guest has told me that with what happened in Venezuela, essentially Xi Jinping has failed when it comes to the Western Hemisphere strategy. What is your view on that?
I'm not so certain about that. The Chinese still have vast interests in South America, economic interests, political influence. They've got radar tracking or satellite tracking stations. They're building infrastructure, ports, airfields as well. They've still got a pretty good hand to play in South America. One victory like we got in Venezuela isn't going to sort of change the equation entirely, but it does start to raise some doubts in some other countries that have sort of been relying on China, thinking China was the better bet. Well, suddenly the Americans don't look quite so helpless as they did. So this is the beginning of something, if the administration keeps it up, plays its hand well. And it's had some success, say with Panama shifting away from China. You have Honduras saying they just might re-recognize Taiwan. Something's going on, and the Americans are finally paying attention to Latin America. I think Mr. Trump has some excellent advisors on this. But in terms of this being the end of anything, I don't quite see it that way. I think there's a long way to go. Chinese have had 30, 40 years at least of really sort of unchecked opportunity to exert, influence, and insinuate themselves around the world, and they've done that very, very effectively. It's not going to be sorted out by Delta Force going in and taking back the bus driver, Nicolas Maduro, and the missus one day. That's nice. It's a good couple days, but there's a lot more work to be done. China's had a long time to burrow in, and rolling them back is going to be a huge effort.
Chris, does what happened in Venezuela and Iran as well have any impact on domestic policies, or not policies, the politics within China, Xi Jinping's rule, any impact there?
Well, I know following the capture of Maduro, there was a video that went viral on Chinese social media. Just footage of American B-2 bombers and the song Beijing Welcomes You, seeming to imply that whoever made this video was welcoming the U.S. into Beijing, hoping that they might do some regime change inside of China. So again, that's something that the CCP is pretty worried about, and I'm sure that video was squashed very quickly.
Okay, I just want to end with you, Colonel. Same question to you. Any impact, what's happened so far, whether we're talking about Iran or Venezuela, on domestic politics, the CCP? And what do you think would happen if, let's say, we see a regime change in Iran combined with the U.S.'s takeover temporarily of Venezuela? What is the combined impact of that on the CCP as well?
Well, if you throw in Cuba, it gets even better. China, this omnipotent Chinese Communist Party, will be exposed as not being quite as strong as it thought it would when you lose your main proxies. Even the Russians might look at this and say, maybe China isn't all we think it is. So this is politically a huge thing for the Chinese. This would be a real blow to this sort of impression or this sort of facade that they have of inexorable domination of the world, that they can't be stopped. Well, when you have public revolts, public opposition, combined with the help from the United States and some others, that it shows that there's a Potemkin village aspect to a lot of what the Chinese Communist Party does, both overseas, how it's regarded overseas, but also domestically as well. And I'd mentioned those 600 million people living on $5 a day. That isn't really that much of a success. The Chinese Communist Party elites are scared to death of them.
Okay, well, Colonel Newsham, Chris, really great to have you both on today. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.